Seizure warning for those with photosensitive epilepsy. This video has bright colours and flashing lights that may trigger it. I'm going to give you 3 seconds to pause the video and leave. 1, 2, 3. And that's your warning, getting straight into the video. On a barren planet, an ancient force of ever-present malice births something primordial and powerful. With reasons unknown, its creation seeds landscapes of crimson, pulsating, writhing flesh, rising vast formations of mountains and rolling hills, as vascular webs sprawl and flow like rivers upon its surface. Its disorganized being rooted deep into the ground, veins and cartilage ever spreading. Then rises another old one from the sinewscape of the first. Agitated by the mindless mass, it wills the ever-present biomass to form organs, muscle and bone, as decay sweeps the grounds. The skirmish of growth and entropy cascading violently, fracturing the pulsating landscape. The war of life and death sparking continuous mutation as its majority withers. From the chaos of the conflict, something new emerges from the rot. Simple, cruel and basic, but so much more, among much else with it. But with time, something else primeval is born alongside the others, risen from the second oldest one. It sees potential among the stagnant chaos, with plans it seeks to set in motion. So, blade in hand, it renders a wound into the realm beyond, unleashing an energy bestowing something onto the beings below. It gives their existence soul, value, direction, by proxy much more. And with their desires satiated, the 3 primordials sat, content. That, my disciples, describes the subjects of today's video, the Triagons from Cruelty Squad, or more accurately their actions. An aspect of them I'll further elaborate on later. Regarding the lore of these 3 beings, drawn from a combination of my own research and Pyrocynical's in-depth breakdown of Cruelty Squad, the best analysis of the game's lore we have, at the current time of recording this, which is the 5th of December 2024, the lore as to what they are, or more accurately what they're based off of, goes like this. You, the protagonist, are trying to disable the Archon grid as to reset reality itself, which is crumbling by the time you get there as the world itself is rotten to the core and needs resetting. In the lore, the Archon grid's life was created by the Triagons, under the eternal malice of the sun, which represents Yaldabaoth, chief ruler of the Archons, as per the lore of Gnosticism, which Cruelty Squad is based heavily on. Meaning, lore-wise, the 3 Triagons are stand-ins for the Archons or represent them. The first Triagon, born of malice, was created by the sun, Yaldabaoth, as part of its plan, albeit the boss fight you carry out to do this resetting of the Archon grid, Abraxas, who is the final boss of the Archon grid level, represents all of this through its design. Its 3 heads represent the Triagons, and the middle one's associations with the sun represents the sun connection with the first Trigon, and its connection to Yaldabaoth. But, despite him being the final boss, the real Triagons are only revealed in the house mission, taking the form of big blue worms. The 3 targets you have in this level essentially being mouthpieces for them to speak from, albeit they are more akin to priests than an actual extension of the worms themselves. To summarize all of this, the evil Yaldabaoth and his subordinates, the Archons, created the Archon grid and universe in Cruelty Squad, the Triagons who created life in this universe being his Archon subordinates. In addition to this, Abraxas is also a greater Archon as per the law of Gnosticism, and presided over 365 Archons, meaning killing him greatly disorganizes them, but interestingly enough, after his defeat, death as a concept ceases existing, meaning Abraxas was likely a 4th Triagon, one that carried out the role of death, not metabolism like the second, whom created death as a mere byproduct and not directly. Therefore, the protagonist's actions, while they reset the universe, have created one without death. So, in a way, nothing has changed for the world of Cruelty Squad as it already possesses reanimation and means of cheating death. Albeit this makes the protagonist into a godlike being too, whom can reshape the world as he wishes, implied by the Golden Age ending, where you reach the cradle of life. All of this being the lore if my understanding is correct, which it probably is. And with the lore covered, now to talk about the story of the 3 Triagons, which is told by the 3 men in the house mission, so I can analyse it properly for you. Getting straight into it, said by the first Triagon guy, the first of the Triagons was born of malice. It grasped the flow of the solar terror with both hands, and perched on top of this doomed world, the germ is born. It looked up into the sun, beyond the veil of power. It extended its bulging vascular arms through the boundary and took its share, the disease spreads. It assumed total control of the biological shape of things. It became primal engine of technological progress, and so everything started to twist and turn, pulsate and pump, the infection is final. Said by the second Triagon guy, when the second Triagon descended from the newly emerging mass of life, The world was mired in confusion and chaos. The overwhelming clutter of biology got on its nerves. It demanded calm, the feeding begins. It saw visions of guts, of decay and metabolism. The opportunity had come to extend a cavern of intestines deep into the ground, to start processing the glut of excess organic mass, to introduce limits to writhing and shitting. Chlorhydric acid. Existence became a scarce product, and the nerve bags came to detest the limits. Suffering was born. The second Triagon was content with its power. It was happy. Metabolic domination. And for the third Triagon guy, he says, the third Triagon was born of death. It saw that the world was radiating excess energy. It wanted to put great things into motion, but greatness wasn't possible without value. The first transaction. It took its blade and cut a large hole into the boundary, creating a sudden flash of high volume transactional power. And just for a moment things seeped value into themselves, assuming souls. The second transaction. The hole was quickly mended and the overpowering transmission of value was cut short, but in that moment the seed of primordial financial might was planted, and the world took on its transactional form. Conflict and discord emerged and the third Trigon was ecstatic, the third transaction. And with that, that's the story of the three Triagons told by these three characters found in the house level. Now I'm going to analyse it, and I'm going to break down the language usage used throughout this story. Getting straight into that, starting with the dialogue of the first character, notice the very negative terminology used to describe the growing biomass. The germ is born, the disease spreads, the infection is final. These very negative views on the biomass characterize and describe it as a negative thing. This thematically plays into Gnosticism, which views the physical world as an evil thing, which, considering that's the thing Cruelty Squad is heavily based on, explains the negative description towards the biomass created by the first Triagon. In addition to this, the biocurrency being extracted from the flesh caves in Miner's Miracle is very likely being extracted from the same biomass made by the first Triagon. This flesh stretching deep underground, solidifying the story of the three Triagons in the game's lore, through show don't tell, as it's very obvious once you put everything together. Moving on from that, the phrase the first of the Triagons was born of malice is definitely referencing the sun, as in the first ending, the phrase the sun smiles at you with eternal malice is the final sentence in the text on screen. Further reinforcing this, it says it grasped the flow of the solar terror with both hands. Solar meaning sun, connecting it further to the sun who is shining with eternal malice. The sun even being directly referenced. Beyond the veil of power, it extended its bulging vascular arms through the boundary and took its share. As in, it is taking direct power from the sun itself, as planned by the sun, whom it is serving. And that pretty much breaks down the story of the first Triagon guy. Analysing the second guy, the phrase the second Triagon descended from the newly emerging mass of flesh implies that the second Triagon was born from the biomass itself. It is a descendant of it, albeit this can be interpreted in a few other ways. It descending from the newly emerging mass of life could imply that it was becoming lower than that mass of life, or was cast down from it, which would make sense considering the religious connotations, albeit it more than likely means that the second Triagon is a genetic descendant of the biomass and wasn't cast out of it in a religious context. Moving on from that, from the part of the story where it says it saw visions of guts, the part where it mentions the acid, and how it plans to introduce limits to writhing and shitting, this is describing the process in which organs began to form. The creation of things like stomachs, intestines, livers, kidneys, bones, muscles, stuff like that. Which is why in the third section existence became a scarce product, and the nerve bags came to detest their limits. This second section and third section implies that the addition of organs forced the mass of organs and flesh to take actual corporeal forms that can move around, that being animals and such, as the second Triagon has forced functionality upon the biomass, forcing it to take functional shapes, those obviously being animals. But this has also obviously created a nervous system as the things it's created detest the limits on them, which requires a level of intelligence for a living thing to do. So it's not just livers, kidneys and stomachs that have been created, it's nervous systems and brains, and by proxy some degree of intelligence. Also, for elaboration on chlorhydric acid is, it's another name for hydrochloric acid, the acid your stomach produces to digest food. But yeah, with that covered, now to talk about what is said by the third Trigon guy. The third Trigon being born of death means that either the Trigon of death directly created it, or it's metaphorical for the actions of the second Trigon giving rise to it. Next we have the phrase, but greatness wasn't possible without value, the first transaction. I think this is symbolic of how life around this time was a scarce resource, which had functionality but overall lacked any real goal, outside of just surviving and existing. Related to this, when it cuts a hole into the boundary and gives everything value, and value seeps into things giving them souls, which is the second transaction, this isn't just the creation of trade and money. I believe this also represents other things being given value, like sound. Sound, like animal noises, ending up becoming the basis of language, as language is the transaction of information through sound, which allows two beings to convey ideas, putting its great plans into motion. Not just that, but I believe it also gave things like crops nutritional value, and it gave ideas actual value to the sentient life that had developed them, which created culture, religion, etc. All of this giving the life in the Cruelty Squad world a sense of direction and purpose, in countless different ways, all as part of the third Triagons plan. And as said in the third part of its story, conflict and discord emerged, which is expected, and is a natural consequence of its plan. And with that, that's the story of the third Triagon. Also, I missed something with the second Triagon. Suffering being born, along with the addition of decay, implies the creation of disease as well, which wraps up the second Triagon. And with that breaks down the implications of their story, and explains some of the word choice, and how it connects to the lore. And with that, now to go over some actual general information on them which I forgot to do at the beginning. Gameplay wise, the three Triagons are only found in the house mission. They are stationary and sway back and forth lazily until provoked. Once engaged, however, they will shoot a laser at you, and the only way to avoid it is to strafe sideways. Firing at the head enough times to do significant damage will cause its head to fall off, which permanently defeats them, and you'll be bestowed a gift for each one. One of them grants you the Golem exosystem, one of them gives you a shotgun, the Raymond Shock Troop Tactical, and the third one gives you a deposit of $1 million. And when they are defeated, they do not respawn, unless you go out of your way to modify your save as to bring them back. And with that covered, now I'm going to summarise today's video. In summary lore-wise, the Triagons and the Sun are standing for the Archons and Yaldabaoth from Gnosticism. They created the world of Cruelty Squad, the first Triagon creating life, the second Triagon creating metabolism and death, albeit indirectly, and the third one gave everything purpose and sentient life a goal. The final boss Abraxas likely being a fourth Triagon of death, which is why the world becomes deathless after being reset. The real Triagons only being found in house as big blue worms, which give rewards when you kill them. And that's pretty much it. Well, my disciples, I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something from it, especially the part where I broke down the story of the Triagons, as to teach you the art of implication. Also, no, I do not support Gnosticism. As a Scarletist, I find it extremely heretical, but what you believe in is up to you. Anyway, that's it for this video. See you around. Goodbye.